Lady.
I think. Hi everyone, welcome in. If you guys can, drop where you guys are from in the chat, and then you can also type your grade. And don't forget to name yourselves as well. Oh my gosh, we have people from everywhere. This is awesome. Mexico? Oh my gosh. We're so excited to have you guys all here. All right. Team, are we ready for this introduction or not quite? Not quite? Alrighty. All right. Welcome everyone. If you haven't heard before, please drop where you're from and your grade. That would be great. We want to know who's all on this call. Alrighty. Welcome in, welcome in. Hi everyone. Oh yes. I love the little exclamation point. Enthusiasm from where you're from. Alrighty. Oh, I love now people are all putting like their countries because this isn't just national now. This is like global.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Okay, welcome in everyone. Perfect. All right, so I think we're ready to get started here. One last time, if you haven't yet, please drop where you're from in the chat along with your grade. We'd love to know where everyone's from and who's on this call. All right, without further ado, let's get started. So welcome and thank you for joining tonight's webinar. We're going to give people like a few more seconds kind of to get settled. We're getting a few more answers here. So I'll let you guys finish typing. All right. Puerto Rico. Okay. Colorado. Hey, I'm from Colorado too. That's awesome. Okay. All righty. Perfect. Thanks for all joining. All right. So we're going to get started here. Thank you all for joining tonight's session, Critical Conversation, which is the second in a third-part series being led by some of our experts at Providence High School. My name is Delaney Mosseller, and I'm a senior at Heritage High School in Colorado. And I also serve as a facilitator for the Student Leadership Network on mental health, and I look forward to help moderate tonight's discussion. The Work to Be Well webinar series is for students to venture with Work to Be Well and NASSP, focused on helping teens reduce stress and proactively care for their own mental health. Before we officially begin, I would like to introduce Kit Mata, NASSP Board President.
Delaney, thank you very much. I was just in Colorado last week and we met with quite a few students and talked about this very topic. So it's near and dear to my heart. I'd like to extend a hello to everyone. It was interesting to see where everybody was at. And Delaney, you said it perfectly. This is global. This is international. We have Mexico, Puerto Rico, and then I think almost every state was in there. The last I looked, there was almost 100 folks. So thank you. Welcome to tonight's session on Critical Conversations. My name is Kip Mata. I am the president of the National Association of Secondary School Principals, NASSP, and it's the parent organization of the National Honor Society and NATSTUCO, National Student Council organizations. Our goal is to bring together student leaders like yourselves from around the country and obviously around the world to work hand in hand with school leaders to strengthen our education system and communities. And in difficult times, supporting mental health and wellness for both students and educators is a top priority. We're thrilled to partner with you and all this work you're doing, and thrilled to partner with Work to Be Well, a wellness program promoting teen wellness across the country and working to normalize the conversation about mental health and reduce the stigma that surrounds it. In my time in Colorado, I was able to visit with some students from a couple of different high schools in the Denver metropolitan area, and almost to a person, they were still talking about the stigma that surrounds mental health, and that's not feeling comfortable to go get work, go get help. And that's why we're doing this work, so we can remove that stigma, because everybody, adults, young children, at some point in your life, you need to go talk to somebody because it just all builds up. But it's amazing to see so many people from across the country and across the world, quite frankly, joining to learn about how to have these intense personal conversations with family and friends about mental health. While these conversations are often very difficult and hard, they are also very, very important. Like physical health, mental health requires work. Just by being here, you are taking an important step to improving our wellness, your wellness, and the mental health of the important people in your lives. Congratulations, and thank you for putting in the work. In a moment, I'll turn this back over to our panelists, but first, a few notes about tonight. So everybody is aware this event is being recorded, and you will have access to the recording, and it'll be emailed to you here in the next day or two. We encourage you to ask questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. The little link is down at the bottom of the page. And at the end of the discussions, we'll make sure that we get all the answers that you have asked questions to. With that, I'd like to turn this back over to the Work to Be Well team from Providence High School in Burbank, California, who have graciously volunteered their time to help students like you support your friends, your teachers, your family, and yourselves. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Shanika Dale, and I am the Dean of Equity and Wellbeing for Providence High School in Burbank, California. I'm going into my 4th year at Providence, and I am so grateful and proud that we are a Work to Be Well school. We are so excited to be here with all of you today to talk about heart-to-heart conversations, those really hard conversations that we have to have with our family sometimes, our parents, our friends, or even just other people we're building rapport with. So we're going to cover a guide for being successful during those critical conversations with your friends, your parents, and other people. And now I will allow the student presenters to introduce themselves from Providence.
Hi, my name is Luna. I'm a senior who attends Providence High School in Burbank, California. I'm the senior class vice president here and secretary of Well Aware, the club at my school for mental health. I'm Latina, whose mother is Mexican and father is Salvadorian. I'm constantly educating myself on current political, environmental, human rights, Black, Indigenous, and people of color and LGBTQ+ issues. As I'm constantly educating myself, I always strive to educate others in my community. Although I love my ethnicity and culture that my parents have made me so proud of, Living in a brown household, mental health is an overlooked topic. The life I am so grateful to have now is one my parents did not experience. So mental health is not really an important topic of discussion. I'm really excited to present this heart-to-heart conversation and offer new ideas, insight, and tools where all the people involved in the conversation are being heard, which then creates effective communication so that change can be made and help is received.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Ruiz. I also attend Providence High School and in Burbank, California, and I'm also a senior. I'm also the president of my school's mental health awareness SLO, Well Aware. This topic is really hits home because I come from a really strong Hispanic household, and these heart-to-heart conversations aren't things that normally happen or honestly just brought up in general. Being able to have these conversations, and I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity and these resources to learn how to have these conversations have really helped me and really helped the relationships around me. So thank you guys for all being here, and this is a great topic to learn about, and I'm glad you guys are all here.
Thank you. So before we get started, it's important for me to share the disclaimer. The following presentation is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional, medical, or behavioral health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or a qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical or mental health condition. So we're just going to take a moment to ground ourselves. This is called coherent breathing. So what we're going to do is we're going to inhale for a count of 5, and then we're going to exhale for a count of 5. We're going to try and do this for about a minute, and I'm going to help guide us a little bit. So again, we're going to inhale for a count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's pause for a little bit. Ready to inhale again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now try it on your own, counting in your head for a few seconds. A few more times. Who else feels a little jittery after doing that? It's been a long day, right? So this is something you can do if you're feeling anxious, if you've had a long day. Coherent breathing, inhaling for a count of 5, exhaling for a count of 5. Very good. All right, so before we get started, we're going to talk about what makes a conversation difficult, right? So this is about critical conversations, having those heart-to-heart, but we want to take a moment to pause to hear from you all. What makes a difficult conversation difficult? So please share in the chat. And Luna and Sophia, if you can read a few and acknowledge our guests, thank you. What makes a difficult conversation difficult?
Alexis, I really agree with you that being vulnerable is really, really hard.
And Lucas, I totally get you. People's reactions really do scare me, especially since it's the factor that we really can't control. We can plan ahead and see our desired outcome and everything, but people reacting, we really have no control of. So I think it's just best, and we'll see in this presentation that what we can do is just really compose ourselves and just be as calm as possible. And Stephanie, also, it doesn't have to be for like a specific topic or a specific person. It's really just those conversations that really need to be held, whether there's an issue that's bothering you or it's building up in you. They're just really important to have, because when we don't have them, it can really put tension on a relationship or ultimately end one.
Maybe we can get a couple more. Thank you so much for sharing. Maybe two more. What makes a difficult conversation difficult?
Haley, when the other person might get mad at you if you say something is something I completely relate to. I always, when having a conversation, am trying to think of the other person, and I don't know what is good to say or wrong to say. It's always really hard to find that balance.
And Tammy, I totally understand. And I think that when you are trying to say something that you 100% are sure that the other person doesn't agree with, that's really where compromise comes in, because sometimes no matter what we do, we cannot change what the other person wants or what they think. So this is really where communication comes in. And if there's that middle ground where you guys both can meet, then that is what we aim for.
So good. Thank you all for sharing. Even that sharing in this chat is a form of being vulnerable. So thank you for being transparent with us and sharing your perspective on what makes a difficult conversation difficult.
Now, with having a heart-to-heart conversation, these are the 4 different steps. Step 1 is you have to get ready. The tips for getting ready for the heart-to-heart conversation is you have to mentally and emotionally prepare yourself for these critical conversations. What I do is I usually write down in my journal or just on a piece of paper what I want to discuss. Now for step 2, you want to get going. You want to create a safe environment to foster a successful critical conversation. With step 3, you really want to go deep in the conversation, making sure that everyone is getting their needs met and feels heard during those critical conversations. Just how like you want to be heard, your parents, your friends want to be heard as well. So to really just put yourself in perspective is really important with these critical conversations. Now, going forward is step 4. You want to establish roles and responsibility of each person and create gentle accountability after a critical conversation.
Thank you, Luna. So we are going to take our time going through all 4 steps as you prepare for this critical conversation. And we want to point out that we call this a heart-to-heart because these are matters of the heart. These are things that matter to you. These are things that you value. And when we're scared, when we're anxious, when we're overwhelmed, when we have fear, that simply means that you care, right? So now we're going to create an environment where you have the mental and emotional capacity to move forward and to gain communication skills with that.
So what is a critical conversation? I know we've all shared what we feel during a critical conversation, what's hard about a critical conversation, but to put a more exact definition to it, a critical conversation is a discussion between people when there are high risks. Desired outcomes and opinions do differ, and these types of conversations are usually avoided due to the fear of challenges and possible lacking of strong communication skills and comfort. So once again, these conversations or these topics that really eat up at you. For example, if I'm having an issue with my friend and it's really bothering me, and it's been prolonged for an amount of time because I'm scared of their reaction. I'm scared what's going to happen. I'm scared of what they're going to show me or what they're going to do. And although that's scary, it's really important to have these critical conversations because that also shows how healthy your relationship is. It shows that open line of communication and it shows that level of comfortability. So yes.
Thank you, Sophia. And we have this quote at the bottom. This is hard because it is, right? So you guys drop a heart in the chat if you felt that right before a really hard conversation or in the middle of a real hard conversation or conflict. And you're like, this is hard. You either said it or you felt it. Drop a heart in the chat.
Also, I would like to say something. This is so hard. Hard usually has like a really negative connotation. And I think it's really important to recognize like, yeah, this is hard, kind of letting it in and really kind of digging deep into it. Why is it hard? Why do I think it's hard? And then as you're finding those answers within yourself, it's really going to help you move forward with the conversation and effectively communicate.
Thank you.
So let's reflect. Why do you think people sometimes refer to difficult conversations as a heart-to-heart? For me, I refer to it as a heart-to-heart because you're so honest about your feelings and you're being so vulnerable that it's really scary, it's frightening. Oh my gosh, am I going to be like rejected by this person, neglected? Are they really not going to hear me or what I'm really trying to say? It's a lot of insecurity. So I would love to hear what you guys say in the chat. If you guys could please give your input or what you think.
And I'm also curious if any of you have told someone, hey, we need to have a heart-to-heart. Some people might say we need to have a sit down, we need to check in.
I completely agree. It is such a vulnerable moment, and you're allowing the other person to see another part of you that's really shown. Emotions are usually something we all try to hide. So to like talk about them and show them is the most frightening thing in the world. Emotions can get the best of us. I really agree with that. So much so that like emotions get the best of us, that kind of makes us act out, which is why breathing techniques are so important, with just like really hearing the other person. And if you want to like act out on them, just breathe, calm down, count to 5, and you'll be able to respond effectively.
And also, I totally understand getting both sides. It's really easy to get blindsided because we only are capable of feeling what we feel and what we see and how we feel. So trying to understand someone else can be really difficult. And I think that this is why these conversations are so effective, because not only does it strengthen a friendship or a relationship, you get to see how they feel. And sometimes when we don't have these conversations for a while, we don't get that perspective. We are just in our mind, and especially if it's someone we love or a friend or a relationship, we want to know how they feel. We want to know how to strengthen this relationship. So I think that's also why it's really important.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to take a moment to identify indicators that a heart-to-heart needs to happen. So in the chat, how do you know when you need to have a heart-to-heart? Is it on your mind all the time? Do you get anxious about it? How do you all know when you need to have a heart-to-heart with your friend, your significant other, your parents, maybe a person in your group project? How do you know?
Mandy, it's impacting everyday life in a negative way. Completely understand that. It's like a weight in your shoulders, and like every morning you wake up and you just think about that. So that's how I know it's like, okay, this is really weighing on me and impacting like my schoolwork, for instance, or sports, or just any activities I'm a part of. So that's when I know I need to sit down and have this conversation.
Definitely not being able to do the things that you love. Sometimes when another person is overstepping their boundaries or something like that, you can feel restricted. And then also, it's not only just you, but that's when the other person comes into play. And it's like, I can't do what I love or what I want because I'm scared about hurting this person's feelings or how they're going to feel about me. So I think that's also another.
Patrick, feeling uncomfortable, completely agree with that. There's some things that are not even just like make me cry or sad or mad. It's just like this person took an action that made me uncomfortable and I feel weirded out. So the best way to get clarity on that is to go directly to the person and talk to them. So I completely agree with that.
Thank you.
So our first step out of 4, getting ready. So to get ready for our conversation, these are some tips that are just going to help us get ready and ways to emotionally and mentally prepare for these conversations. And this is important because it allows us to prepare for the critical conversation, and because these conversations can lead to emotional reactions or responses that can be prepared. They can lead to emotional reactions that we aren't ready for. And this preparation allows us to be more focused and emotionally available and mentally present. So some tips to get ready are to first reflect on why this conversation is needed. What is bothering you? What is happening? Do you feel restricted? Just really clarify the cause and effect. This is making me feel this way. And also to write down concerns, views, and questions. Sometimes when everything is juggled in our mind, it can really help to write down everything so we can physically see it and also break it down more in our mind. And also write down our desired outcome. We know this conversation needs to happen, and we know that we feel either pressured, stressed, anxious. So we want to write down the desired outcome. And also when we're writing down this desired outcome, we also need to realize that this is not the outcome that's always going to happen, but it's always good to see where we want this thing to go. So maybe in the middle of the conversation, you can look down at that paper and you can be like, this is where I want this to end up. And also pick a conversation starter. So maybe you know this conversation needs to happen. Maybe you don't know how to start it. Maybe this is causing you a lot of anxiety and you don't know where to go with that. So maybe pick a conversation starter. It could be maybe something that led up to it, and then it can be like a train of thought. That's usually what I do. I'll also pick a comfortable place for the conversation. This one is really important for me. I definitely don't like noisy places or things that catch my attention. And when I'm having this one-on-one with this person, I really want to be comfortable and I really want to be vulnerable and feel safe. And also on their part too. I don't want this to be a noisy place or something that's capturing our attention, so we can really focus on each other and how we both are feeling. And lastly, writing a letter or email if needed. So I'm the type of person that when I have a conversation with someone, I tend to forget a lot of things. And then after the conversation, I'll be like, I should have said that. I forgot to mention this. So this is where writing a letter or email comes into play. I've written one beforehand, and if the conversation didn't go the way I wanted it to, I gave it to the person so they can open it later on after a break. And this can lead to a second conversation, and this can lead to more resolutions, because when we forget something or we leave something out, it can really be frustrating.
Thank you, Sophia. So I'm curious if any of you have done this before, if you've journaled about it, if you've written it down, before you had a really difficult conversation. Let's see in the chat.
Also, Abigail, you said, how do you mentally prepare for these talks when you know your emotions are going to be dismissed? I totally feel you on that. But after I started asking the question, okay, but why are they being dismissed? And then I started to realize that I had a part in that conversation, like why it was going wrong. Because, the person that's like talking about their emotions is like, I'm doing nothing wrong. Like I'm like, communicating so well with you. They're usually being dismissed because you're not hearing the other person, active listening. So just really like soak in what they have to say, and really hear them out, because when you start taking like actions of your own, then things will start to go better for the conversation.
Yeah, and it's really easy to get blindsided. I know I've had these conversations and they've pointed out something that I was doing repeatedly and I had no idea that I was doing. And I think accountability is also really important. So I understand that I did this and I understand that it caused that, but I want to know how you feel and how you feel about what I've been doing. So I feel like it definitely takes effort on both parts. And I feel like, and definitely when the other person doesn't feel the way you feel or want to partake in this conversation, it can be really frustrating. And I totally understand that.
Thank you.
The second step, getting going. So this is the actual conversation. So getting the conversation going, these are some tips on how to get the heart-to-heart going and to create a safe environment for this conversation and why this is important. So this step is really important because it sets a tone and creates a safe environment for this conversation. And implementing these recommendations will allow for a productive and empathetic environment, which will promote and foster respect, compassion, and trust between the individuals involved. So some things that may cross over our mind or we don't think about, because sometimes the need to have this conversation, it just gets too high and we don't think about a lot of these things. So allow sufficient time for this conversation. For example, if something's really bothering with me and my mom, and I just need to talk to her about it and I can't get it, like I just need to get off my chest, I do want to think about when I'm going to do it, because if I'm going to do it on the car ride to school and cut this conversation off, it might be on a bad note, might be on a good note. I don't know where this conversation will be in exactly 15 minutes when it takes me to get from my house to my school. So definitely allow sufficient time. Make sure maybe you guys both clear the afternoon, or you guys both go somewhere you love. Establish boundaries for the conversation. So me, I definitely hate it when people are on their phones and I'm talking to them. So, and maybe the other person don't like, let's see, they hate getting yelled at or raise voices. So maybe before the conversation, you guys can be like, okay, I really want to have this conversation with you and it's really important, but I just really don't want you to be on your phone, and I really don't want you to raise your voice, because that's just not going to get us anywhere successful. And also to allow each person to share their views, concerns, and questions. So this is where cutting people off comes into play. I know that when we have these conversations, we have these immediate thoughts that we feel like we need to share. So sometimes we can cut people off, or we can immediately change the subject. But what's important in these heart-to-heart conversations is that there are two people that really need to talk to resolve this problem, and allowing each person the time and comfortability to say everything they want is really important. So if I'm saying something, I really want them to listen. I don't want them to cut me off or do anything of the sort, and vice versa. So I think that just really helps a productive conversation. And using more I statements. It's okay to tell people how you feel. And for example, if I were in a conversation with my mom, I feel suffocated. I feel like I don't have my space. I feel like you're being too controlling, or anything like that. And then she can feel like, I feel like you might be unsafe, or I feel this. And this is where compromising comes into play. But it's essential that both of you are saying how you truly feel, not necessarily beat around the bush, but it's important that you get how you're feeling out. And use active listening. This is maybe the most important thing, because if you're talking to someone and they're not listening to you or really trying to grasp how you feel, this conversation may not lead to the desired outcome that you want. And just like you want to be listened to, you have to listen to the other person, because once again, this is a vulnerable space with important people that you love. This is why these conversations are so hard. You care about this person, you love this person, or this is a heavy topic. This makes this conversation more risky, and the outcomes are scary. Sometimes this can lead to, maybe this person isn't going to be as involved in your life. Maybe you guys just cannot come to a compromise, but that's okay. But we just need to listen to each other, because this relationship got as far as it did for a reason. So I think both of the parties deserve some active listening.
Thank you so much, Sophia. And I just want to pause and take a moment and get a response from some of you. Why is it important to allow each person to share their concerns, their views, and ask questions? In the midst of our pain, frustration, why is it important for us to allow the other person to share? Go ahead in the chat.
Really quickly, I want to answer Sabrina's question. What do you do if the conversation is important, but the other person is not interested? So in any relationship, both parties really need to be heard. And if you're really you really care about something and the other person doesn't, you really need to tell them, this is important to me. This is not going away. This is on my mind. This is affecting me. And if they don't really take that, or they don't listen to you at all, I mean, that's another topic. But if they both, okay, so for friendship or relationship, they should be interested, they should care. If that matters to you, then that should also matter to them to a certain extent.
Right. And we can't force people to have conversations with us, right? So that's when we might be stuck in step one, where we might have to email them or write them a letter. And sometimes I've had students where they write the letter and they don't even give it. They just crumble it up. They just had to get it out. So remember, you can find a way to get that out if you decide to send an email or a letter, or if you decide to type it out, write it out, and keep it to yourself.
So nonverbal communication. This is so important in heart-to-heart conversations, and a lot of people don't recognize it. So here, the main two are body language and active listening. So body language can communicate stronger than actual words, and I'm sure all of you have experienced this in some sort of interaction that you've had. Either you're talking to a person, they're on their phone, they're looking away, they're distracted by something else. This makes you feel like you're not listened to, and especially in a heart-to-heart conversation where you're building up the courage to talk to someone about this and they just seem so uninterested, it can be really hurtful because you are here trying to display your emotions and be open and vulnerable, and sometimes that's really difficult. And if your body language is showing something different, and you're saying, let's just say I am having a fight with a friend and I really need to talk to them about it, and they're like, oh, I'm listening, and they're on Instagram, obviously you aren't listening. And I mean, this is why we can say that sometimes it can communicate stronger than actual words. And things we must be mindful about is eye contact, facial expressions, and posture. Even hand gestures during a conversation, during a heart-to-heart, body language can influence the flow of the conversation. If I'm strongly making eye contact with the person I'm communicating with, if I seem involved and I care, that's going to help the flow of the conversation, versus if I'm not paying attention or I'm doing something else. That's going to show the person that I don't care that much, and I really would rather be somewhere else. Also, active listening. So active listening is fully paying attention, understanding, and responding to what the other person is sharing. So once again, this is the same thing. Giving somebody your attention. This is a space where you guys are so vulnerable. And this, once again, it's someone you care about. It's your friend, it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, it's your mom, it's your any family member. You really want to listen to them because they're coming for, right? They're coming for to you, you're going to them. It's something that's more heavy than a normal conversation. And this is why active listening is so important, because you really want to respect either the anxiety that they went through to bring this up to you, all the time that it's been building up, or the things that you haven't noticed that they're bringing up to you. So this is why active listening is so important. And it allows us to remember what is being said and respond effectively with or without our body language. So we can head nod, we can do eye contact, open body posture to make ourselves more open and not closed off. So these are really things that we don't always notice, but can really help aid the conversation.
Thank you, Sophia. And another thing that I want to point out with active listening, that does include you are listening to understand that other person. Your mind can't be thinking of your response. That's active listening. All right, so we want to hear from you all in the chat. How do people communicate non-verbally? So we've given some examples, but we want to hear from you all. What have you experienced? How has someone non-verbally communicated to you with their body language or gestures?
I think eye rolling and scoffs are maybe and eyebrows are the really the most common ones that we see here. And I think a lot of us do these unintentionally, but it can really impact it.
Yes, agreeing with Sophia. I think what happens a lot when I talk to my parents and, they're communicating what they think and feel, I kind of, I'm gonna be honest, I find it like a little bit ridiculous. I'm like, that doesn't quite make sense. I'm not really seeing your point. And that really shows through my face, because then I start like staring off into space, or I roll my eyes, and then boom, like Luna, are you rolling your eyes at me? Like, and then the conversation just goes somewhere else. So
Mhm.
really just like, okay, breathe, hear them out. Like, I put my hands to my side, so I don't fidget, and I really give them like my full attention. And also, oh, did the question go answered? Oh, so Dean asked, when you use I statements, aren't you just asserting yourself above them? You won't be able to have empathy when you self-center the conversation with what I want and need. I find that actually such an interesting question, because I think, or at least how I would state it, or give an example for it, is my parents are always like, you're beating around the bush, because I'm always talking in kind of third person. I'm like, well, how about if this person feels this way? Like they feel really sad about this. And they're like, well, like, who's the person? Like, can you just tell me it's you? So then I'm like, okay. And it's really hard, because it's like, oh, I kind of have to face my own feelings right now and really like admit that I'm not doing well. So I'm like, okay, I don't feel good and I am really hurt about this situation. So kind of just using it when you're explaining your emotions, because they're your emotions and they're valid, and not really in a sense of asserting yourself, but just telling them how you feel and not really going around that.
Mhm, mhm. And I think with I statements that your tone is also important, because you're going to give that other person the opportunity to say how they feel. So we want to make sure that you all have some agency with that. I feel offended when you dot 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 dot, and they can also reciprocate those emotions and I statements to you. But thank you for asking that. It's a really good point. Anyone else?
And I think back to what Luna said, especially with her parents and everything, and nonverbal communication. Something that I've done is, I mean, I roll my eyes a lot and I do it unintentionally a lot. They tend to point out everything that they don't like when I bring something up, or you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing that. And sometimes I roll my eyes, and if they get mad at it or they point it out, I've recently just been starting to say, okay, sorry, instead of no, I'm not. Because when you say no, I'm not, or I'm not doing that, it really adds tension that's really not needed. So it's also important just to like calm down and realize, you know what, I am doing this, and maybe this doesn't make them feel heard or as comfortable as they can be.
And with Emma, what if the person is upset by your concerns with the relationship? Like you express how you feel honestly and they feel like you're being mean to them. That's a really good question, because, oh wow, you like got me. Miss Dale or Sophia, do you have
Good.
anything to
Yeah.
say? Because I don't even.
Well, here's the thing. People will naturally be defensive and feel like they're being attacked when you hold them accountable, right? So sometimes we won't get through all these steps when we try to have a heart to heart with someone, and that's okay, right? You don't want to force it, and you don't want to put yourself in a situation where things can get aggressive. So if someone tries to shut it down and say, well, you're being mean to me, then I would pause and possibly revisit the conversation later. That person might need some time to self reflect.
And another question in the chat, what if the compromise they propose doesn't work for you? One thing that we haven't really talked about as much here is sometimes these conversations will not go well, and it will be the end of something. It will not continue, and that's necessarily not always bad, because if the person cannot see that something matters to you, and if they're claiming that they care about you, but yet your concern that's bothering you doesn't concern them at all, then they are really showing their priorities. And I feel like sometimes you really have to look at that. And I mean, honestly, I would rather end something before than let something lead up and something worse happen.
Right.
And Sabrina, with your question, I think Sophia kind of already answered it, but it's just like, like she said, like sometimes these critical conversations are not going to go well, and it sucks. But that's the reality. So with the like reality, you kind of take it in, but there's also so many benefits to it, because then it's like, well, then if the person is not willing to hear me out, if the person doesn't care for what I'm feeling at the moment, then how are they benefiting you? How is this person a friend? So I think that there's also like beneficial sides to it as well, with not just only like negative aspects.
Mhm. And we acknowledge that this can be hard, especially if you want to try and repair and save the friendship or relationship. But I am a strong believer that we teach people how to treat us, right? We lead by example, we set boundaries. And also, there are relationships like family members that you don't get to choose them, right? Then you can enforce boundaries. A trusted adult in your life, your school counselor, can help you with what that looks like with those relationships that you don't get to choose. Okay.
Okay, so let's reflect. Have you ever felt misunderstood, neglected during and or after a critical conversation? With my personal experience with this is specifically with my parents. They will make like comments here and there of like, you're a teenager, you don't know how it is to be truly like sad or like go like feel anxiety or be depressed, which usually belittles me, and then that makes me not want to talk to them like ever again. So that's my like personal experience, but I would love to hear what you guys have to say in the chat. I am so glad you guys agree. Wow, there's a lot of people who agree.
Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard to open up your heart and be vulnerable with someone and to walk away feeling misunderstood, where your feelings aren't being validated. That's really hard.
And it is hard as adults too. I think now that I've gotten older and, you know, it's like my last year at home really, um, I've tried extra hard to put myself in perspective and, you know, having these like now more deep conversations with my parents, it is really hard as adults as well. And I'm like, yeah, I talk to my mom a lot about that, and she was telling me like all these like different like conversations that we've had throughout, and she's like, you know, it was really hard for me, and I was like, wow, I was so caught up in like my emotions and like what I was feeling that I wasn't also looking at your side. So I think that's really important, and I agree.
And
Thank you.
Emma, I totally understand. A lot of my heart-to-heart conversations that I try end up in tears, and I think because of that is such the lead up that we let it build to. It can eat at us so much. So when we attempt to start talking about this, we can just burst into tears. Our emotions can take over. Sometimes I will barely try to start a topic and I will start crying because it's been so stressful, or it's been adding up, or I'm just so scared of how this person is going to react. Now, in regards to progress, sometimes that's part of the process. Sometimes both of you opening up and showing that emotion is part of the process. And I mean, sometimes they don't go well, like we covered, but I think it is also important that it can be part of the process. Every process is different. Some of us show our emotions differently, and depending on the person, how close you are with them, it can all depend. But definitely, sometimes that can be part of the process. But with no progress, you definitely do want to see your priorities and their priorities in the relationship, and see if it's one that you want to continue working with.
And Abigail and Emma saying how like every time these critical conversations always just end up with like you in tears or just crying. That's where emails, text messages, or just like a letter really like help, because instead of, you know, having to talk out loud, if that's something that's really hard for you and it's hard for everyone, then what I've done is actually I've written things down. I've written a letter and I've given it to my parents, and I've had them read it while I'm sitting there. And then that's another like effective way to communicate. Well, without me having to like outwardly like say something.
That's really good, Luna. And you can write a letter to the person and have them read it in front of you, because it pauses their brain for a little bit. They have to take their time and really let it sink in what you're saying. And I also want to point out, have some grace for your parents. Okay, I don't know your situations, but this is hard for parents too. Sometimes they say the wrong thing, sometimes they feel misunderstood. And in most cases, not all cases, I want to be clear, in most cases, parents are doing the best they can with what they know. So have some grace for your parents as well, okay?
So step 3, to go deeper with the conversation, making sure that everyone is getting their needs met and feels heard during these critical conversations. And why this is really important is because it provides the opportunity for the individuals involved to be understood with a better possibility of getting their needs met. Implementing these recommendations will promote effective communication and encourage the individuals involved to provide and receive support. So some tips with that is check for understanding. So when you're expressing how you feel, or your parents are expressing how they feel, your friend, and you kind of don't really understand, or you're like, when did I make you feel like this? So just be like, I don't really understand what you're trying to say. Can you please further like your explanation so I can really try to see your point of view, and really see what I did wrong, taking accountability once again. Asking questions for clarity. Assumptions get you nowhere in conversations. So just really being like, hey, mom, what did you mean by what you said? I don't really understand what you're trying to get at, or I don't really understand. Can you please tell me? And then, they'll answer. So just once again, just really like communicating. Identify each person's needs. So really seeing all around, not just with one person, but both sides, or, if it's your mom and dad, seeing everyone. Identify options available to meet those needs. For example, if your friend is like, I need you to hang out with me every day of this week, just be like, well, then comes back again to compromising. I can't really hang out every day this week, but I can hang out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Those are the days I'm available. Do you want to go out to our favorite like ice cream spot and do this? Just compromising. Yeah. And then sharing any fears or anxiety about the topic, something I always do to start off the conversation. I'm like, I'm not going to be perfect with talking. I'm going to stutter because I feel really anxious, and I am like, I can't necessarily like talk well on this topic. So if I'm like stuttering or anything and you need understanding, please let me know. Just really setting the base of like what you're feeling about it, so your parents understand, or friend, anyone. Remember that silent moments are okay. This is really important. It's something I actually have just recently learned, because I always kind of perceived silence as like, oh, like this is bad. Like they have nothing to say. Like I've left them speechless almost. But no, silent moments are amazing because it's giving the person time to reflect. They're thinking, they're like, oh, wow, okay. And even I take silent moments. So yeah. And then identify if a mediator is needed. A personal experience with that is when I came out to my parents as bisexual, I needed my best friend there because she, one, made me feel comfortable. It was just more of a comfortable space for me. And second, I just really, if I was going to like stutter or like, shut down, she was going to be there to almost like talk for me or speak for me, or just be like, hey, like just give her some time, being the mediator. So yeah. With step 4, going forward, tips on how to go forward after heart-to-heart, establishing roles and responsibility of each person, and creating gentle accountability after a critical conversation. Why this is really important is because it allows individuals to lead a critical conversation with an understanding of role and responsibility of how to approach the dynamic going forward. It provides gentle accountability for everyone, which will promote and foster healthier dynamics within the relationship. So establishing roles and responsibility of each person is super important. going back to like my own personal experience with it, when I like talk to my parents, my dad is always the one to like blow up, or he's like goes off completely. So my mom and I have like established that, you know, my mom is going to be the one to be like, hey, like calm down, it's okay, let her talk. So her responsibility is kind of just, you know, calming down my father, and really taking care of him while I'm trying to express what needs to be expressed. Establish gentle accountability and building a support network if needed. I have 3 best friends at my school. So if I like have a bad morning with my parents or just anything in general, I know I always have my like 3 best friends to run to so they can give me a hug, calm me down. And it's the biggest help in the world. So, and then checking in with one another, especially during COVID, I was constantly doing this. I would make sure to check in on like my best friends every night, just asking how they are, how their day went, just really showing them that someone is there and that they care. You don't necessarily have to be like, how are you feeling? Like, are you like feeling down, depressed? No, like you don't have to ask that. Just a simple like, hey, what's up? How are you? We haven't hung out in a while. You know, just really those like simple text messages that really show someone that you care for them. Revisit a conversation if needed. We've talked about this. Sometimes conversations don't go well. So revisiting the conversation is going to have to happen with some conversations. So just being like, hey, I would really like if we could talk about this again. It's been on my mind and I would like to talk about it. And then do not be afraid to include professional support. I have a therapist. I have many friends who also take therapy. It is not something to be embarrassed of at all. If anything, you're like reflecting, and if you're evolving as a person while you're reflecting and getting all these tools and mechanisms for this person. So it's really nothing to be embarrassed about. It's so great because you're self-developing and evolving, and that's so amazing. It's so great to see. So yeah.
Thank you, Luna. All right, so this is a really important time where let's kind of shake it off. I don't know if anyone's getting tired, shake a little bit. We're going to do some role playing. So I'm going to read a scenario with Luna and Sophia, and we're going to provide you guys with 2 scenarios. The first scenario is when a heart-to-heart goes terribly wrong. The second scenario is when it goes well and it's more productive. All right? Here we go. Luna and Sophia have been friends since elementary school. Now they are currently in high school and have remained close. Luna and Sophia have been struggling with communication about their true feelings in regards to new friendships. Sophia has become popular on campus and made 3 new close friends on her volleyball team. Luna does not play volleyball and feels as though Sophia has become distant. Luna has a difficult time expressing how she feels about this. Sophia notices that Luna gets upset or annoyed when she spends time with her new friends and decided to avoid talking about it due to the fear of a blow-up. Sophia decided to use the 4 steps to address her concerns and to attempt to save the friendship. For step 1, Sophia addresses her, Sophia writes down what she wants to share with Luna, and she reaches out for support with her school counselor to get some ideas on this. Sophia requests for them to meet up after school in a quiet area on campus. This is how the first scenario went.
Hey Luna, so I just wanted to spend some time together so like I can share what's been on my mind recently. If it's okay, I just wanted to start, and I really want to hear how you feel about what I'm saying. Please know that I genuinely do not have any intention of upsetting you. We've been friends forever, and I really value our friendship. We have so much fun together, and we're always there for each other all the time. I just want us to get back to where we were. Lately, I feel like we haven't been on the same level, and there's just some tension between us.
Well, yeah, Sophia, you've been acting funny lately, so I just gave you your space.
Okay, well, here it goes. So I noticed that lately you get upset when I hang out with teammates from volleyball. When I invite you to join along, you decline. And when I ask what's wrong, you say nothing or just walk away or change the subject.
Wow, Sophia, you are always with him now, though. I can't believe you're blaming me for this.
Let's try not to exaggerate. I don't think that it's fair for you to say that because you and I still hang out. I feel like you don't respect that I have other friends.
You're so fake. I'm not doing this with you.
And Luna storms out. All right. How common is this? This is reality, right? Okay. So now we're going to go into the scenario where it's more productive and successful, and then we'll chat about it for a couple of minutes. Scenario 2.
Hey Luna, so I just wanted us to spend some alone time together so that I can share what's been on my mind lately. I think it'll be best if I start, but I really do want to hear how you feel about what I'm saying. And I just want to clear up, I have no intention of upsetting you whatsoever. We've been friends forever and I really value our friendship. We have a lot of fun together and we're always there. I just want us to get back to where we were because lately we just haven't been on the same level and there's some tension that I don't really like.
Well, you've been acting funny lately, so I just gave you your space.
Okay, so here's what's been on my mind. I noticed that lately you get upset when I hang out with teammates from volleyball. When I invite you to join along, you immediately decline. I just really want to know how you're feeling about it because when I ask what's wrong, you say nothing or you walk away or you just change the subject.
But Sophia, you are always with them now.
I mean, I hang out with them, but I think it's important for us not to exaggerate. I don't think that's really fair for you to say because you and I still hang out. I'm worried that this is really hurting our friendship, and sometimes I feel like you don't respect that I have other friends.
We used to be together all the time. I have nothing in common with the girls you hang out with, and it just feels like they don't like me.
Well, actually, they are really open to getting to know you, and you just assumed that they didn't like you.
Well, I guess.
I do want us to stay friends, but I'm having a really hard time juggling our friendship and my new friendship with them. It's become really hard, and I really want to know how you feel and what are you worried about?
You're my best friend, Sophia. I don't really have any other friends. I feel so left out sometimes, like you're solely just forgetting about me. I guess I feel like you're going to eventually enjoy being with them more than I'm not good at making friends like you. So sometimes I feel like I have no one and I feel lonely and it makes me feel horrible.
But Luna, you have to know that I always care about you and I know you care about me. And that's what I love about our friendship. I don't want you to ever think that you're losing me or to ever feel alone. We're best friends and I don't want anything to come between us, but I do have an idea if you're open to it.
Yeah, I'll try my best.
Why don't we set some days when only you and I hang out? When I hang out with my other friends, you are always invited. I know the beginning will be hard, but how about you hang out with us this week and then maybe we can even show them some of our favorite spots or go watch the movie that we've been talking about. Let's just take baby steps. And if it's challenging or you feel uncomfortable at any time, let's just promise to be honest and open with each other.
Baby steps sounds good to me. I'm really sorry if I pushed you away. I feel so much better that we talked about this and how my actions really, like you were so aware of them and you felt enough to care and bring this up to me. Thanks for really asking how I feel and really listening to me. I appreciate it.
Well, I mean, of course, you're my best friend, why wouldn't I? And I know you, so when something's off, I think it's important for me to reach out.
All right, so let's take a minute. What do you all think about scenario 1 and scenario 2? I know we're a little over time, so we'll give you all about a minute. What do you all think about those scenarios? How relatable is that? Can we share one from the chat, please? And then we'll move on. Thank you so much.
So Josephine said, I think scenario 2 is effective enough to really communicate. And I really agree because I think scenario 2, there was still honesty between the two people, but yet they were able to come to a compromise and an agreement. So I think that was really good about that scenario.
And some people notice the more delicate approach with scenario 2, and I feel like that's really important because sometimes we can come off really strong when we don't notice it, and the other person can feel like, oh my God, they're attacking me, like I did everything wrong. And it's also important to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Like if you got a text or like something from someone like, I want to talk, that's scary. I've gotten that. I feel horrified. I don't know what they're gonna say if I was doing something wrong, if I didn't notice. Honestly, it's scary, but at the end of the day, this is beneficial for both parties.
Right, because there's a difference between saying, stop exaggerating, Luna, versus, I think it's important for us not to exaggerate. Let's elaborate. Let's talk more about it, right? Thank you so much. All right, so I wanted to pause and just to encourage you all, you are not alone. It's important for you to embrace those in your support network. Reach out to a trusted adult or peer for support with preparing for and processing these critical conversations. If you don't have an adult that you're comfortable with, please make sure to check out Teen Line or Youth Line, okay? You do not have to navigate these conversations by yourself. So we're gonna wrap it up and we're gonna leave a couple of minutes for any questions or thoughts. Any questions or thoughts? Any questions or thoughts in the chat?
So with Anna, how do you try to get the other person to open up to you when you know they're closed off because of their past and all you want to do is be there for them? I really relate to this because I was in a prior relationship with someone who just was going through a lot of things and they didn't know how to open up. It's not something in their nature. So I think for that, you don't want to force anything out of them at all because they're not going to say anything until they're ready, but just really, constantly reminded them that, hey, I'm here for you and I care for you. And if you ever need to talk, I am always with like an open ear and open hands, like really just kind of giving them that constant reminder is something I constantly do. Because you don't want to be too overbearing, but you also want to tell them that like you're here.
Thank you, Luna. Any other questions or thoughts?
And Maria's question, it's tricky because I've gone through that too, where there's a lot of heart-to-heart conversations where every time we have a conversation that leads to a more serious one, or every few days I feel like something's building up and there's a need for this conversation. And I feel like there's definitely stages in relationships where you guys are figuring out each other's communication styles. You are really just trying to find a common ground with each other, and that's definitely fine. But I mean, if someone isn't really trying to understand and putting in any effort, then that would go into, do you want to keep putting effort into this relationship?
Thank you, Sophia.
So there was an anonymous question saying, what if the person you're trying to talk to has somewhat narcissistic tendencies and you can't get away? Miss Dale, I think this one is for you.
So if you are dealing with someone that has those traits, lean into an adult for support, a trusted adult in your life. Those situations can become very dangerous for your mental health. So make sure that you're leaning into an adult for support with that.
Okay,
One
so
more.
they said we're going to end with this question and hand it over to Delaney.
Thank you. All right, so before we do that, critical conversations can be found under the relationships topic tab at worktobewell.org, the presentation, the facilitator guide, and the workbook. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much to everyone again for attending. We really appreciate your guys' attendance and your participation. And before you leave, there's a quick survey that we'd like you all to take so that we can gather information and improve our webinars. So that link is going to be dropped in the chat really quick. And if you can all do that before you leave, that would be greatly appreciated. It's just a few, it's short. We'd love for you guys to do it. And we would also like to remind you to please sign up for the next month and to watch out for the recording tomorrow. That's going to be sent out to you guys. And also keep registering for the third session for this series. We've loved having you guys so far, and we'd love to continue for this next session. You can also register with Work to Be Well. It's the same as how you registered for this one. Please fill out that survey. That'd be greatly appreciated. And again, thank you all so much for joining us today. This was super fun, and I know that I learned a lot and from your guys' chats. It seemed like you guys all did too. So a big thank you for everyone who put in the work for this today. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Don't forget to fill out that survey and then look out for those emails about the recording and register for the next one. Thank you guys. Thanks for attending and participating.
Great job, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. You did a fantastic job presenting, and you can notice that, people who are still with us thanking us for the great information. So it was great. I would say, and if you want, feel free if you need to jump off or if you want to hang on, we can, stay for a while. It's one of those, unfortunately, we can't lop off